morning from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. On behalf of the Emerging Markets Institute, welcome to the Cornell Keynote, Artificial Intelligence as a Transformative Tool for Development and Inclusive Growth in Emerging Markets. My name is Lourdes Casanova, and I am the Gail and Rob Canizares Director of the Emerging Markets Institute. As artificial intelligence continues to disrupt industries and jobs worldwide, its impact in emerging economies presents or could present unprecedented opportunities for innovation, growth, and inclusive development. But do emerging markets have the infrastructure needed for the development of artificial intelligence?
Yes.
For instance, infrastructure. You need broadband, data collection, abundance of energy. Data centers use a lot of energy, and we know of energy deficiencies in many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, in India, and in other places. Skilled labor. Do emerging markets have enough artificial intelligence scientists, computer science, data scientists, and most importantly, regulation and trust in governments? And also, do we have enough large language models, LLMs, such as ChatGPT, in different languages? Earlier this week, my country of origin, Spain, the Spanish government, signed an agreement with IBM to develop a large language model in Spanish. There is none so far. But besides Chinese, English, or now Spanish, what about the more than 7,000 languages spoken in the world? Based on the above, the Brookings Institute in Washington has analyzed the artificial intelligence national strategies. Very few emerging and developing markets have one. Most of the countries with one national strategy are among the rich parts of the world. In Latin America, only Uruguay and Mexico are mentioned. In Asia, beyond China and India, no other emerging market seems to be ready, and none in Africa. Within this context, what emerging markets, and that's what we are going to discuss today, should do to make sure that the AI revolution lives to fulfill its promises of development for all. So let's start the discussion, and we have an excellent panel today. We have Mark Mobius, chairman of Mobius Emerging Opportunities Fund, who is joining us from Dubai. Megha Kumar, deputy director of cybersecurity and technology, Oxford Analytica, joining us from the United Kingdom, and Soumitra Datta, dean and professor of management at Said Business School, University of Oxford, also joining from the UK. So let me start with Soumitra. In the Global Innovation Index that you designed and co-authored with the World Intellectual Property Organization, you often talk about the digital divide between the developed world and emerging and developing countries. Will AI decrease or increase this digital divide, and why? Soumitra, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lourdes, and I'm indeed honored to join this EMI panel with such distinguished colleagues in the panel. To answer your question, I would like to first go back a few decades and just remind ourselves about how we have seen information technologies in general impact the development of nations. Today, for example, we look at Korea and Singapore as rich, developed nations. But a few decades ago, they were actually right there in the middle of emerging markets. And of course, today they have transformed, and the transformation has been driven to a large degree by the successful leverage of technology and innovation. Now, AI for me is nothing else but just the next phase of the digital revolution. It's, of course, turbocharged by much more powerful computational capabilities, much more large-scale data analysis capabilities, and a general powerful intelligence that is emerging in multiple sectors. Now, if you carry on and look at the same trend, I'm completely certain that AI will help the development of nations in many contexts. A good example of this is what happened in China. China is also, by many respects, an emerging nation, even though it is very developed in some cases. But China has, for example, established AI as a center part of its growth strategy, a center pillar of its development and competitiveness strategy. And you see the successes of China, which are very widely evident today in the world. And Chinese companies are using AI very successfully, be it in retail or in many other sectors also, including a variety of different applications in banking, in other sectors also. Now, you might ask the question, what about other countries? Okay, India, it was mentioned earlier. India is also trying to catch up. It is behind China, but it's trying to catch up. But India has the advantage that it has this enormous public-private infrastructure called the India stack of APIs that provides the country a very good basis for starting to implement AI. I'm working now with the Confederation of Indian Industry, and we are actually looking at working with the government in terms of trying to understand how can India, as an emerging market, leverage the potential of AI. To come back to the question you asked about, will it decrease the digital divide? The answer is most likely it'll increase it. Why do I say it'll increase it? Because historically, what you see happening in the world of technology is that as technology revolutions have happened, the certain segments of populations or of economies, typically the less developed or the poorer economies, have also benefited from technology. Yes, they get technology, but they have typically lower level of skills, lower level of resources, and a smaller network in terms of the network leverage. And they can create value, but they create smaller amounts of value than the more richer nations, the richer parts of society, which also have technology, but better technology, more resources, more skills, and a better network. So what happens is technology is a great magnifier, multiplier, and even though value is created by everyone, the value creation by the rich is typically higher than the value creation by the poor. And this is the reason why we'll see great digital divides both across the rich nations and emerging nations, and even inside a nation between the rural parts of the country and the emerging part and the city parts of the urban parts of the country. And I think this will continue with the AI revolution. We can talk a little later about what can be done to reduce the digital divide, but my fear is that unless strong action is taken, the digital divide will increase in the future with AI. Back to you.
Okay, sorry. So now I'll pass the word to Mark Mobius, chairman of Mobius Emerging Markets, Emerging Opportunities Fund. So Mark, as you prepared for this new venture, Mobius Emerging Opportunities Fund, you toured the world. I remember your posts, your blogs from India, but also from Madagascar, Mauritius Islands, South Africa, Brazil. And I remember how amazed you were by the use of technology. Mobile payments and others are taking off in all parts of the world. So in relation with that, and you were very optimistic about the future of emerging markets. So Sumitra spoke about that the digital divide may increase with AI. Please give us a more optimistic view, and let us know, how do you think governments and the private sector in emerging markets can collaborate to ensure that the benefits of artificial intelligence arrive and are distributed equitably. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lourdes. As you know, I'm a perennial optimist, so I have a very positive view. And I believe that these emerging countries, emerging markets are leapfrogging into the AI area. And this is an incredible development because the emerging countries have one very important advantage. They're not burdened with the old infrastructure, the old technical infrastructure, which in developed countries has to be surmounted, has to be changed in order to introduce new chips, new kinds of technology. So in many of these countries, you're dealing with a blank slate, so to speak. So you can do things that you probably wouldn't be able to do in some of the developed countries. So that's the first thing. The technology is now being leapfrogged into these countries, and they are going over all of the old technology that the developed countries have to deal with. So they don't have to reconfigure some of the old infrastructure that you have with the telephone systems that we had in the past, the switchgear and all the rest of it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, with the incredible introduction of high bandwidth chips, semiconductors, particularly the ones from Samsung and companies in Korea, Hynix, these chips are being introduced in the emerging countries at a lower and lower cost with incredible power, incredible memory power, and incredible power to introduce new and faster information. So the information flow that's taking place in these countries has been accelerated. So we're in a situation now where someone in an emerging country, regardless of where you are, everybody has a cell phone nowadays. You can go to any country in the world and they will have a cell phone. Even those people that are let's say, not in the higher income bracket, they will have a cell phone. It's become an essential part of life in all these countries. And so without the impediment of old infrastructure, they're now able to introduce newer infrastructure and get access to this incredible wealth of information. The other advantage that these emerging countries have is that they're not burdened with the legislative and judicial baggage that many of the developed countries have. So if someone wants to start a new AI venture, they probably will not be running into any restrictions by the government, whereas in the developed countries, they may run into these restrictions. So my feeling is that the AI revolution is going to be incredibly beneficial, by and large, to these developing, emerging countries. Of course, there will be some sectors which will be negatively influenced. For example, call centers, as you know, will be influenced by AI, but there'll be other new sectors coming in as a result of the introduction of AI, which will create new jobs, new opportunities for the emerging markets participants. So in conclusion, I think in some ways, AI is beneficial beyond big tech. It's beneficial beyond what we've seen in the past. And it's something that is going to have an incredible revolutionary impact on what we're seeing in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. And last but not least, I'll pass the word to Megha Kumar, who is the Deputy Director in Cybersecurity and Technology at Oxford Analytica. Recently, so of course, at Cornell University, we are also worried, or we are also thinking of the disruption that AI may cause education and may cause, of course, universities. We have organized all kinds of initiatives, funding faculty, for new initiatives using AI in the classroom. Others don't want students to use ChatGPT and other LLMs. And as part of these initiatives, we invite experts from all over the world to give a presentation, to spend time with the faculty. So Mega, you recently came to Cornell to give us some light on how to deal with AI in education, in higher education. And you focused a lot on the human side of it, on the ethical part of it. So, Mega, what is the role of regulation in ensuring that artificial intelligence is used in an ethical way with respect and fairness for all? For example, in terms of protection of children, protection of minors, there is a lot of talk about it in relation with social media. And of course, something that Mark just mentioned, managing disruptions in the labor market. Mega, the floor is yours.
Lourdes, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. To sort of start with your core question first, Lourdes, which is about regulations and what role they can play. My position is that regulations are a necessary, but by themselves an insufficient component of the toolkit we need to ensure that AI is developed and deployed fairly and ethically. You raised two examples, first about the information environment, how we keep minors, but all humans safe online. And the second is about the job market. And let me briefly tackle both. So with regard to the labor market, I find that there is not a huge contradiction between what my colleagues Soumitra and Mark have already mentioned. So GenAI, like any customized foundation model, can augment workers by performing a wide range of tasks, whether it's knowledge workers such as doctors and lawyers, or creative workers such as artists, all kinds of institutional corporate workers such as sales staff, marketing professionals. They can all use GenAI applications to automate routine tasks, plan workflows, brainstorm faster, prepare first drafts. And like developed markets, emerging markets also can use these tools to diminish the competency gap that we have between high-skilled workers across the world and their less skilled peers. Moreover, since some parts of unpaid work, domestic work, such as grocery shopping, homework planning, they can also be partially automated, one can hope that this technology will enable more women to join the full-time paid workforce in greater numbers. And also, as is the case with all iterations of technological innovation, whole new categories of jobs will emerge, which both developed market labor forces and emerging market employees can benefit from. But on the downside, ILO research, for example, has pointed out that higher and upper middle income countries are more likely to be affected in the initial stages of AI's augmentation and then ultimately automation potential. And that's partly because of the lack of digitization, lack of digital infrastructure, and lack of digital skills in large parts of the emerging markets. And also in, say, labor surplus economies such as India, large parts of Southeast Asia, definitely large parts of sub-Saharan Africa, human labor is still cheaper than technological upgrades at an industry-wide level. So in order to prevent AI-powered transformation from resulting in large-scale elimination of jobs, which would hurt EMs a lot more because they have overall a younger demographic, a larger labor force, we would need a sort of a massive widening of public access to digital infrastructure, improving digital skills, reskilling and upskilling of the labor force. And one of the points that Mark raised about the potential of EMs to leapfrog, I think that is true, but there are limits to that because much of the leapfrogging that has happened is within the smartphone ecosystem. And smartphones also vary in quality, but overall, most people access the internet via a smartphone. But if you want to harness the potential of AI at an institutional level, at an SME level, and indeed at an industrial level, then you need to be able to upgrade people from smartphone pay-as-you-go contracts to a reliable, accessible broadband access, which is via computers. And that requires a whole kind of infrastructure overhaul, as well as a overhaul in the competition and the pricing of this hardware that is essential to truly unlock the potential of this technology. So that leapfrogging is possible, but it requires a lot more from the private sector and the public sector for it to be actualized. There's a reason why, e-payments, mobile payments took off, because they linked online banking with a smartphone, which, as Mark has rightly pointed out, most people now have. But if you want to harness the true potential of a foundation model that can help you draft a legal briefing, you can't really do that on a smartphone at an institutional level. Now, the second key issue is about the information environment. And here, both developed and developing economies are at risk. And here, the issue is not so much market size, but almost more importantly, the nature of the polity that we are dealing with, because EMs vary from established democracies to weak democracies to non-democracies. And in all of these contexts, the misuse of generative AI to create socially harmful content, disinformation, influencer propaganda campaigns, that risk is very, very high. And we've already had some very worrying examples, of, for example, male students creating and circulating explicit non-consensual images of their fellow female classmates. I mean, that is a genuinely worrying phenomena. And social media have repeatedly failed to perhaps do their best in terms of tackling this kind of content. Labeling of synthetic content, of the kind that, YouTube is now trialing, or Facebook, that can be helpful in sort of at least raising consumer awareness. But it doesn't do anything to prevent the damage that is caused by the creation and widespread circulation of damaging propaganda. And here, the nature of the polity really matters, because for an established democracy, whether it is Indonesia or the UK, you have to preserve freedom of expression while at the same time trying to limit the circulation of this harmful content. And for all these democracies, finding that right balance between regulating unlawful content while at the same time finding a way to regulate awful but lawful content is really hard. So the EU is trialing it. The UK has a bill for that, but most emerging markets have not had a very successful content moderation framework in place. Many of them have tended to favor the state or the government in power, or established political parties. So what we will need beyond a agile regulatory apparatus is greater involvement from the private sector, whether it's owners of social media companies or AI vendors, and civil society, researchers, academics, traditional media, to sort of shape what it actually means for AI to be ethical and transparent and privacy preserving and responsible. All of these ethical terms that you see appearing in the intention bill of the US or EU or UK or India, all these ethical principles so far are primarily just that, statements of intent. What they actually mean in terms of applicability, accountability metrics, that has not yet been established, which is understandable because the tech is really new and it's in its infancy. But these are some of the pressing challenges that they will have to tackle. And for both the information environment all the way to the labor markets, you will need a multi-stakeholder approach to get this right. I will close there. Happy to take any questions. Lourdes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Megha. I will now, so we will start now with the Q&A. And please, I am requesting the audience to write the questions in the chat, and we will answer the question as they come in. And for this part of the webinar, I will ask Chase Young, who is graduating this year and who has been working at EMI on the subject of AI regulation and beyond. Chase, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lloyds. My name is Chase, and I've been working as a research fellow for EMI this semester. I've been tackling the question on the policy measures emerging markets should implement to align with their long-term economic and social goals. I identified two key dimensions: government interests. Government alignment, the pressure a government puts on an AI provider to be in line with government interests, and human interest protection, the degree AI providers must consider and protect human stakeholders. I've been working this past semester to classify countries along these two dimensions. And with that, I'll now go into the Q&A. My first question is for the panel as a whole, and it's from Peter. And that is, how can AI be used in these emerging markets to tackle large-scale problems which often take years or decades in a much shorter time? And I guess we'll start with Samisha.
Yeah, okay. So I think AI will help tremendously in helping solve some of the problems that we face in emerging markets. Let's take two examples which are very popular in terms of being quoted. One is education, another is healthcare. In both areas, there's a massive deficit in emerging markets in terms of available quality education, available quality healthcare. There's a massive deficit also of skilled personnel to provide this kind of services. And AI can certainly help in so many ways in improving the quality of both education and healthcare. You can use AI tools to make, automated or semi-automated mechanisms to provide education. AI can help in the diagnosis of medical symptoms and provide even some support medical treatment. So, you can go on and talk about them, but I think AI will be a huge boon for helping solve some of the big problems that the world faces. Back to you.
Thank you, Sumitra, for that answer. I guess our next question is for Megha. This is from a viewer. If AI is used to improve cybersecurity, will some people then be able to use AI to dismantle cybersecurity infrastructures?
Yes, Chase, thank you very much. And that's a very important question. So as with most other things, AI can be a boon to the cybersecurity industry, or it can be its newest nemesis. So with regard to the good uses of cybersecurity, AI models, they don't distinguish between writing language text or creating an image and writing computer code. So you can use AI, so developers, cybersecurity specialists, designers can use AI tools to generate code, at least its first draft, much faster and much more cheaply. And that is helpful because it narrows the skills gap that we're seeing, especially in the cybersecurity industry, where there is a talent shortfall globally. So if more and more students and young career professionals and even more experienced one can use AI to sort of build cybersecurity software, that would be a very, very good thing. And also in the broader military industrial domain, some of the areas for leveraging AI are apparent. AI, because it can process a lot more data faster than humans can, it's ripe for using in surveillance, in post-disaster reconnaissance, in simplifying military logistics. But on the downside, the same tools can be used and will be used by both nation-state linked hackers as well as criminal hackers to create new kinds of malware, and especially new malware that evades existing cybersecurity detection protocols that are now routine. And the other threat is that with a lot of text to audio models or text to image AI, you can create a very realistic, plausible imprint of, let's say, my voice or my iris. And biometrics identification systems, for example, that we use for banks, have become very common, and they are supposed to be, well, up until the AI revolution, they were sort of the most cutting edge tools to ensure that our online activity was as safe as possible, and the barriers to accessing financial tools or health services were reduced. But now, if you can clone an imprint of my voice to break into my bank account, then the risks are serious. And we have had several experimental studies where AI models have been used to write malware, and experiments which show that a very plausible voice imprint can be created using AI to break into banks. So the cybersecurity industry and nation states that take cyberspace very seriously will have to try and keep one step ahead of the misuses. But the misuses are many, and they are just coming.
Thank you, Megha. Our next question is from Fermin Romero, and this one is from Mark. How can emerging economies, which have historically lagged in technological development, overcome the inertia and resource constraints to cultivate innovation and realize the tech as has been described so far?
Well, the beauty of AI is that it can be used as a teaching tool at a much more effective level. With the incredible speed and encompassing data that AI can achieve, means that teaching tools can be customized to the individual, regardless of what nation he or she is or what language he or she is using. And this is an incredible way for countries to take advantage of the capabilities of AI. So I would say, at the end of the day, AI is going to end up being one of the most revolutionary teaching tools that is available to people around the world. So now with a click of their iPhone or cell phone, they can learn new languages, they can learn mathematics, they can learn physics, they can learn ethics, they can learn law at a much faster speed and cheaper than any time before in the history of mankind. So I would say AI is an incredible tool for that purpose. Now, as we've heard, yes, AI will be used for nefarious purposes. People will try to steal money, will try to do lots of other nefarious activities with AI. But the answer to that, of course, is transparency. If you want to fight the bad impact of technology, whether it be AI or any other kind of technology, you've got to encourage transparency. And that's one of the things that governments around the world, including and most particularly emerging market governments, should encourage transparency. The revolution in technology is now enabling us to transmit information about all of these nefarious bad impacts and let people know what they are and how they can be warned against them. So the opportunities there are very great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And it was awesome to hear about how AI can be used to improve learning and allow students to learn quicker than ever before. But this also there's other uses of AI by students that have been raising concerns in academics. So this is a question from this is a question from Sunil Samanta, and I think Sumitra, you could touch in here. What kind of change will academics, including universities, need to do to encourage students using AI and yet stay relevant and still stay academically rigorous?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chase. And I think this is a question which is on the top of the minds of almost every educator and every business school dean or every university president that I talk to. How do we as an industry actually learn and become better at leveraging AI for learning or for our own administrative processes? Now, focusing on learning, the challenge out here is that we don't fully exactly know how the technology will evolve, because technology is not a static entity. It's not that you've done the black box and the contours are known and you deal with how to handle these contours of this black box technology. the technology is evolving continuously. And the technology, in fact, might be evolving at a pace faster than what our organization might be capable of handling them. So there are 2 or 3 challenges out here. One is being able to keep up with the pace of technology itself, just to be able to understand what are the boundaries of what is happening out in technology is very important. Second, I think what is very important is to understand and do experiments about how can technology be used to increase the effectiveness of our learning processes. And there, I really emphasize the word experiments, because I don't think we know the answer. If you ask a student or you ask a professor, no one actually has the answer of how it should be or how it will be used. But we have to do experiments. So I really encourage the experimentation mode in our universities and business schools. And third, I think it's very important that we need to have the courage to be able to make changes. Let's assume, for example, that courses have to be changed in which a lot of the basic material can be taught or self-taught through a GPT-based tutor. Now, that might imply major changes in how a course is structured or how a course is taught. Let's look at examples of also how courses are assessed. Now, if, for example, GPT or AI technology can change the way students are assessed, and the traditional assessment procedures are no longer that applicable, we need to be able to create the new ones, and that creation requires management of organizational change, requires courage, and I think that's where the actual change sort of hits the friction hits the ground. And I really believe that if we are able to keep on learning, if you're able to keep on experimenting and have the courage to change, we will, together with the students, evolve in the right direction. There's no reason why we should not be able to do so. Back to you, Chase.
Thank you, Sumitra, for a great explanation on that topic. Our next question is for Mark. And new technologies take a while before they become profitable. AI is no exception. In a situation where there are a lot of upfront costs required, how can emerging markets keep up?
Well, the beauty of the current revolution in technology and communication is providing the answer to that question. If you look at the population around the world who do not own a cell phone, it's very, very small. Not many people do not own that cell phone. And if you look at the number of people that are on the popular items like Facebook, you'll find that most of the world is on Facebook or one of those systems. So we're now in a situation where people have access to this information, access to something new, and you're going to find that as the AI development continues, that information flow will accelerate. See, one of the key points to remember about AI is that there's no secret formula. It's composed of 2 things. One, speed. In other words, the information flow is getting faster and faster. And number 2 is the amount of information has been getting larger and larger. So these 2 components or characteristics of AI are having an incredible impact. And going forward, I believe that this will have a very, very big impact on civilization generally.
Thank you, Mark. And our next question is from Mega. Misuse. This is another question from the audience. Misuse of AI can harm our society. How can we make sure that we protect jobs, especially those for female workers who may be more reliant on white collar labor, which is more disruptable by AI? What kind of things can we do to protect those jobs?
Yes, the gender component of AI's impact on labor markets is being increasingly studied, and it is a cause of concern. So the ILO's research on both developed markets and emerging markets shows that a lot of the jobs that are disproportionately done by women all over the world teaching, parts of hospitality, low-skilled services, all of those are primarily done by women all over the world. And those are the jobs that are more routine and can be eventually done fully by a machine. So there are several components to how a government or the international community via institutions such as the ILO might address that. I think the biggest is narrowing the gender gap in technological access. While it is true that overall globally, access to online resources has increased to like nearly 64% now, the gap between men and women still remains quite significant all over the world, but especially in lower middle income countries. So narrowing that divide is critical. And the other is sort of enabling women at the primary, secondary, tertiary educational level to be more engaged with and on sort of equipped with leveraging technology in the workplace. And the third component is to sort of narrow in whatever way possible the technological gap that we see between the formal labor market and the informal labor market. Most lower income countries, emerging markets, have a disproportionately large number of workers in the informal sector, which is not regulated, which lies beyond the oversight of governments. And therefore, any measures that you take, remedial measures you take, can have less of an impact on their wages, working conditions, and so forth. So I think efforts to narrow that gap and reaching informal workers where they're at is essential. And technology itself can be a useful tool for that, provided women, just like more men, can have reliable, affordable access to digital infrastructure and digital knowledge. But that requires a lot of heavy lifting from policymakers and labor unions and large private sector employers.
Thank you. Yeah, expanding technology access is definitely a crucial component of bridging that gender gap. Our next question is for Sumitra from Gavin. There's been so much focus on the talk so far on Asia, EU, US, considering Africa has the youngest workforce globally and will be home to 28% of the world population by 2040. How is AI being integrated into Africa as an emerging market?
I think that's an excellent question. And Mark already, I think, referred to part of the answer, in the sense that Africa clearly has a benefit of young population, also has a benefit of not having to necessarily bear the burdens of an existing infrastructure. And that's part of the reason why mobile payment systems like M-Pesa and all really succeeded in Africa so much. But having said this, the immediate benefit of AI in Africa really is in upgrading skills. I think there's so many domains where AI can lead to a rather rapid upgrade of skills, be it in retail, selling products in a shop, be it in banking, selling banking products and financial services, be it in education, be it in health, and so many domains. You can take relatively lower skilled employees, augment their capabilities with AI-based technologies, and really enable them to perform at a higher level of performance. And this has been proven to be true in a variety of experiments. So I think what we can do really is use AI in Africa to raise the level of competence across the nation, across a variety of sectors. And that's, I think, incredibly value generating for the entire continent. Now, if you look at the region as a whole, I always like to look at the AI development story in 3 buckets. So one bucket is the creation of technology itself, actually the R&D and all the innovation that actually happens in creation technology. The second bucket is adoption of technology, where companies adopt the technologies and integrate in the operation. And the third bucket is regulation, where governments, in fact, set the right kind of context for use of technology in their own countries. Now, I do think that the immediate areas of action for African nations should be in the adoption bucket and the regulation bucket. I think that's where action can be executed quite rapidly and impact can be seen quite quickly. The creation bucket will take a little bit more time in most cases because it depends on R&D, depends on researchers, depends on quality of universities and so on. And we know that there's a lot of investment required in the university education infrastructure. A lot of investment is also required in helping the businesses to actually invest more in business R&D. The positive side of this story is that we have seen a rise in VC money going into Africa. And that actually is a very positive thing that has been seen in the last few years. And that has been noticed in the Global Innovation Index report. So I'm actually very optimistic that Africa can create more value in adoption by having good regulation and also by investing in the creation and the research and R&D side. Back to you, Chase.
Thank you, Sunitra. I'm sure Mark also has a few thoughts on the question of AI usage in Africa from an investor perspective.
Yes, I agree with what we just heard with Sumatra. I believe that you're going to see an acceleration of information flow in these African countries. And I also believe that a regulation will be an important component in the sense that the regulators are going to have to ensure proper competition. One of the things that you see in some countries, and by the way, including the United States, is too much concentration in the sector, in the information sector, in the technology sector. For example, YouTube and WhatsApp owned by one company. Now, these are the widest used apps in the information world today. I believe that's too much concentration. And that's one thing that the African countries will have to guard against. They're going to have to encourage competition, not in terms of the people supplying the communication infrastructure, but also in terms of the people supplying the apps and the other infrastructure, software infrastructure. So I think that's a very important aspect we have to look at.
Thank you, Mark. We have another question for Megha. How important is international collaboration and cross-border initiatives in addressing AI technology and especially in emerging markets?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons and areas where international collaboration would be useful. Firstly, I think broadly in terms of thinking about about making this ecosystem as open as possible to as many as possible. And this is something that both Mark and Soumitra have so far talked about, that in order for more rather than fewer people to benefit from this, we need to ensure greater competition, greater access to digital infrastructure, greater access to digital skills. And I think in that, there is a big role of international collaboration in making those that kind of openness possible, whether it's through technology transfer of knowledge, skills sharing, and sort of broadly thinking about the kind of ecosystem that countries want to have. And the other is sort of, something that hasn't come up so far is, for example, the environmental impact of AI. So while AI can be an enormously useful tool in addressing some of our net zero climate related challenges, whether it's in industry or agriculture or services, the technology itself is very energy and freshwater intensive. And that, again, is a global issue. And the more negotiation, open discussion and debate we have on this, the better it is for the planet and overall net zero targets.
May I ask one question before, because we are coming to the last minutes, and I thought it was very interesting. If we go back to the beginning, we talked about the digital divide that may increase, and now Mark mentioned that what we may see is that at the end, the big technology companies will appropriate, will get even more power and coming out as the winners in this space. And we see that because those are the ones having billions to invest in this space. So if we look forward, and maybe, as I said, let's go, we are closing this very, very interesting keynote organized by Cornell and EMI. So whom do you see as the winners? we will see more digital divide, hopefully not, but we will see more digital divide and more concentration of power in what they are being called the seven magnificent. So the Microsofts, the Googles, the Metas, the TikToks of this world. And then the question is for the three of you.
Yeah, Lourdes, let me chime in. The winners will vary by jurisdiction, and here I think it's important to note that the approach that the US is hurtling towards, what the EU is doing and what China is doing, the three most important AI players, is different. So in the US, the focus has been on encouraging private sector innovation, and regardless of the November elections, that ethos is not going to change. And antitrust issues, although they've become more serious in the United States at the federal level as well as the regulatory agency level, we haven't seen great progress there. The EU, on the other hand, with its Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, has precisely tried to address some of those competition issues so that the access to this technology, as is the case with social media or cloud or whatever, is not concentrated in the hands of a very few select companies. Now, those antitrust sort of measures have yet to take effect, but if early signs are to be believed, then the EU is likely to have a better handle, not a perfect handle, but a better handle on some of these concerns. The China situation is distinct because while private sector still leads on cutting edge AI innovation, as it has done for social media, cloud, and all other major digital segments, the Beijing's writ over its big tech is undisputed, and that has been reinforced time and time again since 2019. So while Baidu or Alibaba or Tencent may develop the best and most cutting edge AI that has 50% of the market or more, at any point, if Beijing feels that this big tech has got too big for its political liking, they will be reined in. So the winners and losers will vary from the US to the EU and to China, and then which other emerging markets buys whose tech. And they do look at each other's regulations, so it matters.
Well, if you allow me to step in, I think the dominant models of the winners have been the American model and the Chinese model. I personally think the EU is subsidiary to the American model. I don't think it's independent, so I think subsidiary to the American model. The interesting case is today what India is doing. I think that's where I would encourage the emerging market to actually look at what India is doing more carefully, because India is playing a third game, a different game. Instead of aligning itself very closely with either the American model or the Chinese model, India has, over the last 10 years, it's not a recent thing, over the last 10 years, they built up a fantastic platform of public-private infrastructure. It's based on a nationwide biometric database that gives free KYC, know your customer services. It's built on a whole stack of APIs for payments, for education, for a number of different services across the country. And I think that provides a very wonderful democratic way to build up and integrate digital services and AI-based services in the economy. So in fact, if India succeeds, and not yet clear that it's succeeding in all dimensions, for example, now you have the open network for digital commerce that has been established in India, which really is trying to disrupt the monopoly power of the large e-commerce companies. I think we have to keep a close eye. So I would encourage the emerging markets to look more at India right now than to look at either US or China, which certainly is also interesting and important.
Yes, I would agree with that very strongly. I believe India is on the right path, and these emerging countries should not follow the US or Europe or China, but look to India as a new path, something that's more open, much more effective, and at the end of the day, will be the winner, I believe, when we all is said.
Thank you very much. And then I'm going to turn the questions and ask Chase for a closing remark. The AI world will be your world. You're starting your career in a few weeks. So how do you see? What would you like to see when we try to stop students using AI is a lost battle. Since last September, my students at EMI are using all LLMs and all the tools in a very intuitive way. So how do you expect from what do you expect from this new AI world? What would you like AI to deliver, Chase, for you and your generation?
Yeah, I think the AI has potential to deliver in a lot of different areas. The first primarily is productivity, that when people are using AI to write documents, to send emails, even, people are more productive. And that is even for like huge, for companies with very complex bureaucracies, it speeds things up if you're able to use AI. Another area is the winners and losers. We have been talking a lot about who will win from AI. It's true the leading models right now are from US and China, and that the US and China do have the most tech talent. But that's just from the development side. There's also the question of who can take advantage of the AI software, and that you're looking at India, you're looking at Africa, you're looking at countries with a lot of young people who just need that boost in productivity to move forward. And then, yeah, another area, which again has been focused in my research, is regulation. How do we make sure that AI, that we can take advantage of this increased productivity from AI without disrupting society? Societies are complex. You have labor unions, you have social safety nets, a lot of things which can be a lot of things which are pretty delicate, and making sure that you're able to keep those in place while integrating AI into systems. Those are kind of areas that I think have been addressed in this talk and are also going to be crucial moving forward.
Thank you very much, Chase Young, Mark Mobius, Soumitra Datta, Megha Kumar. Thank you to the audience for the very interesting questions. Thank you to the eCornell team. Always a pleasure working with you. This is the first discussion for EMI of many. We'll continue the discussion in other webinars, in other events, and in the EMI conference that will take place on November 1st at the Cornell Tech in Roosevelt Island. And we are inviting our audience to continue today's discussions and register in the www.emiconference.com, and also to continue learning about these new technologies and new space that we are entering right now. We're in uncharted territory, and hopefully all these discussions and the learnings on the field can help us guide to this, hopefully a tool for development, for inclusive development for the emerging markets and developing countries all over the world. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day and the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.